Hello, this is Jill Slinker, the Director of the Department of Student Programs for the Indiana Association of School Principals, and I'm also the new Indiana Future Problem Solving Affiliate Director. So I wanted to take you through, as evaluators, the form that we have created for Indiana for the evaluation process for GIPS. The form that they sent us from the international office is wonderful, but it is really, really complex on the page. And so we wanted to simplify what you were seeing to maybe make it easier to see where you needed to be in the form. You will receive this form for each individual school that you are evaluating. We are using Google Forms, or not Google Forms, pardon me, Google Sheets to do this because the saving is automatic rather than using an Excel form. And we will have your results immediately. So there's no lag time in you getting things back to us. As soon as you're finished, we will have it. So that is nice. You'll be getting an email about everything that you will need to do, but I wanted to run through this form very quickly for you so that you knew what to expect. You will receive a Google form that looks like this. The first page just has basic instructions. It's pretty simple. When you are finished, you'll deal with the summary page. But for now, we have pages for 2 evaluators. For the first questions, we're just going to be using 1 evaluator. So you will click on evaluator number 1. And first thing you'll need to do is click on the division for the booklet that you're given. Your booklet will also be shared with you through Google Docs. Again, for the same reason that we're using Google Sheets, it's a quick save, nobody loses anything, and we can transfer the documents very quickly. So the first thing that you'll do is check the booklet that you get, click on the division. We have now, in FPS, you're used to the elementary division being called junior. So we just wanted to make sure that you knew that we're calling it elementary in order to fit with all of the rest of our programs so that we are using the same terminology for all of our competitions. So if you have an elementary book, 4 to 6, you'll click elementary, junior, senior, adult. We don't have any adult entries. The evaluator ID will be given to you in the email. So just enter your evaluator ID. It may be as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the problem, you'll click on the problem and let us know, whether you're dealing with practice problem 1, 2, the qualifying problem, etc. So you're going to end up doing not a lot, but you're going to be doing some left scrolling and right scrolling, as well as the up and down scrolling for this contest sheet, because there's a lot of information on there. If at the top you right scroll, then you'll enter the booklet code that will be contained on the booklet. So you can just enter the booklet code that you are grading. You'll notice there's already a score in here. That was something that was built into the score sheet from the international office, and it tabulates like it is supposed to. But if you have any problems with that, let us know. This webinar is not intended to teach you how to evaluate a booklet. It is simply to talk about how to record that evaluation. I know when we first got the booklets from the international office, I was a bit confused as to what you were supposed to do. So I'm just going to take you through that very quickly and show you where those scores show up. So on step 1, one of the things that we wanted to deal with is to make the form a little bit cleaner and a little bit easier to read what you're supposed to do. And so we took all of the instructions and put them on rubric sheets that go along with all of this. So you can access those rubric sheets under step 1. Click here for detailed directions, and it will pop that out. I would suggest printing those off at the beginning If you have access to multiple screens on a computer to do this, awesome. If you don't, you can click back and forth between them. But I'm kind of old school. I suggest just printing them out so that you have them for your access. We color coordinated this step with the instruction sheet so that you could keep track of which instruction sheet went with which step. So each of these has a step-by-step of how you record your evaluation on the sheet. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to slide this over to another screen so that I can have it available to me as I speak and take you through those directions. So we start off over here. You go to their answer sheet, their workbook, find out what they had for challenge number 1, evaluate that, and then determine, number 1, if it is a yes challenge. If it is a yes challenge, you will go to this column. It says yes challenge. You will pick a category for that yes challenge and click on it. If you'll notice then that it turns white. If you decide that you no longer want to consider it a yes challenge, if you've changed your mind, just double click on it and erase what you did, then click out of the box and it will go back to blank. Otherwise, there's no, undo on that. So you just have to erase it, click out, and it will go back to blank. So let's say number 1 was a yes challenge. Then the fluency, and because I erased it, it didn't do it automatically, but the fluency should automatically populate with a 1. I'm going to just put it up here. So note that if you erase and change things, you might have to go ahead and put the number 1 in for the fluency, but that should populate automatically. Where we have red essentially is where you're going to need to make additional entries. So we need to decide, is it original? We're not going to know that yet until we go through multiple booklets, but you can go back and decide that yes, this was an original. And then when you get to the perhaps Y solution duplicate /B, which stands for blank section, then since it was a yes challenge, you need to come over to this box and select blank and then move on. And then you can leave your feedback in this next block. So again, I didn't consider that necessarily original, but it was a yes challenge, so it has to be blank. If you determine that this is not a yes challenge, you leave this column alone. No number will be put in here, or you can enter a 0, either one. Let's try that again. Enter a 0. Obviously, it's not going to be original, so you enter a 0, and then you click on which works. Make sure when you, especially when you give feedback, but especially when you don't give them credit for a yes. You need to explain to them how that that perhaps could turn into a yes. Now, the scores for fluency and flexibility will populate automatically, and that counts it down here. So this counts the number of unique categories that you've used. You've used 2 unique categories. See what happens when I add the same category again, and then maybe a couple of more unique categories. You'll see that my unique categories now have gone to 4 unique categories. But, ethics and religion, I didn't give them credit for that. All right, so let's go back to defense. All right, notice the categories still stayed at 4 because I haven't given a new category, but the number of yes challenges goes up to 5 because we have yes challenges. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes challenges. Now, what I have to remember is that there shouldn't be a category here if I don't have a yes challenge. So if I don't have a yes challenge, that shouldn't be marked. Okay, so that should not be marked at all. But notice you still need to answer something here. Is it original? And you need to put that it's blank because it is a yes challenge. Okay, so to recap, if it's a yes challenge, you pick a category. It should read 1 for fluency. You decide what it's going to read on originality, and then you select blank over here. If it is not a yes challenge, there's no point for fluency, there's no point for originality, and then you have to choose what's wrong with it, and then make sure to give a leave feedback in that part. Okay, so before we move on to step 2, you need to go over here to the side, and you notice you still have one red box to fill, and that's your clarity score. So make sure that you look at the guidelines for clarity that are on the pop-out page that we showed you. There's a rubric there, and you can decide based on that rubric what score you would give them. And this is a score based out of 10. So, and the validation lets you know that you have to decide what you're going to do. Let's just say this person received an 8, or this team received an 8. The total is going to appear in this lower right-hand corner. Then we move on to general comments. We do need to make sure that we are leaving good feedback for our teams. Step 2 also has a pop-out. All the steps have a pop-out with detailed directions on how to do those steps and what the scoring guidelines are, what the rubric actually means. So it's really important that you continue to consult with that particular rubric in making your decisions. Okay, so what you will do here is in this section, you are going to find the condition phrase that is written on the students' booklets and copy that condition phrase word for word into this box. Okay. You'll do the same with the key verb phrase and the same with the purpose. If I can figure out how to type. Now, the good news is they're going to be turning things into you in a Google Doc. So you should be able to just copy and paste directly from the Google Doc into these boxes. At that point, then, you need to list what the STEM was. So, pick what the STEM was, describe, you'll look at their topic, the place, and the time. Did this fulfill the future scene parameters? If it did, you'll put a 1 in the box. If it did not, you will put a 0. So let's go ahead and say this, that it got 2 of them, but not 3. Of course, you have another place for comments in general on the underlying problem. The condition phrase, this is where you are going to look at the specific directions that were on the pop-out. So the condition phrase, is it present? Is it not present? Is it accurate? And this is one that you'll give it a 0, or 1, or a 2. So let's give this a 2. Notice you already put your future scene parameters over on the right. And so they have already populated that score in here. So you don't have to do anything more with that. You also do the STEM and the key verb phrase. The STEM and the key verb phrase is worth up to 3 points. So let's give them 3 points for that. Notice that it turns from red to white when you have fulfilled what you need to do. So if you look back when you're done and you still have red boxes out there, that means you probably have something that you still need to do. The purpose, enter a number between 0 and 3. Let's give them a 2 on that. And the focus on the underlying problem, this is a score between 1 and 10. And I will consult my rubric on the other page and see that I want to give them an 8. And the adequacy or the importance of the UP is also based on a 10-point scale, so I'm going to give them a generous 9. Okay, so I've filled out everything I need to on this page, and I will add comments, and then I'm ready to move on to step 3. Notice that the total is in the box at the bottom. Okay, so just like steps 1 and 2, there is a pop-out detailed directions. On step 3, scoring guidelines are written here, so the rubric is there for you, and you can do what you need to do. Slide this over so I can read from it. Okay, so what you do with this. On the solution step, you need to determine if the solution is relevant. And just like the first step, if the solution isn't relevant, you don't pick a category for it. So I'm going to click under here, under relevant. If I've determined my solution that they've given me is relevant, I'm going to pick a category. It automatically populates with the number. Okay, so you shouldn't have to do that unless, as we pointed out last time, you've erased that category and picked it again, then it may not automatically give you the number. So you need to make sure that that is put in there. Then at that point, I have to determine if the relevant solution is elaborated. If it is elaborated, then you will put a 1 in this column. If it is not, you put a 0. And then in comparing the solutions to all of the others, I have to decide if it is original. If it is original, I'm going to mark it with a 1. If not, I'm going to mark it with a 0. So still, I have to come over here. Notice it's still red. So I've picked a category. That means it doesn't get a perhaps wire duplicate. That means it gets blank. Right? They determined at the international office that's what they wanted to call that, was blank. So we're good with that. Let's say over here, the next solution was not relevant. So they're not going to get a score here. You can put a 0 in. It's not going to be elaborated, and it's definitely not going to be original. So if you don't have a category here, you should have 3 zeros here. And, I'm going to say why and make sure to comment so that they know how to turn that why into a relevant answer. Notice here, it calculates those unique categories again, and it also calculates the number of solutions that you have created. Over on the right, let's get here. The fluency, elaboration, flexibility, and originality will be calculated for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, there is a category down here that we haven't talked about, and it's please indicate if no student work was submitted. So if you get to this section and it's blank, just come down to the right, click that no student work was submitted, and that will indicate that no, you just didn't skip this page. We know they didn't do it, so you'll be okay with that. Again, comments at the bottom in general. And then we move on to steps 4 and 5, which also has criteria. On how to determine if the grid is used correctly and how to determine the relevance points, what you're going to do with that. So let me slide this over. Notice we're still dealing with color coordinated materials so that if you get confused, that's right there for you. Step 4, basically you have a couple of things that go on. Now, first of all, in step 2, you wrote the condition phrase, the key verb phrase, the purpose. Notice they're going to move the key verb phrase down here. It automatically will copy down there for you, and so will the purpose, so that you don't have to keep scrolling back and forth among pages to get those things, and it will do so as well on the grid. So you'll have the key verb phrase and the purpose on this page for steps 4 and 5 as well. That just helps you do this. So you determine whether it is correctly written or not. Did they write out the criteria? I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Did they write the criteria correctly? Okay. If they did write the criteria correctly, go ahead, and in this column, you're going to have to enter the one yourself. Okay. This one is a little bit different. Okay. Here then, we need to determine whether that criteria was advanced, modified, generic, duplicate, or not relevant. Okay. So if you have to change a drop-down box from relevant to not relevant, remember you've got to erase it. But if I'm going to come here, it was correctly written, I'm going to say it was modified. The relevance points are automatically going to be created there. Let's say the next one was correctly written. It was advanced. They're going to give us 3 points. The next one was not correctly written, and so it's not relevant, or it is relevant, but it wasn't correctly written. Okay. And so, yeah, correctly written, advanced, 3 points. And this one is correct. And we're going to say that this is advanced. And this one is advanced or generic. We're going to call that generic. So you can see it gets 1 point. All right. So the correctly written score is separate. Okay. All you're determining here is it correctly written? And then you determine whether it is modified, advanced, generic, duplicate, etc. So it will calculate for you there. Make sure you leave comments over on the right, indicate if nothing was put in. Now here is where you're going to need to, this is actually step 5, you are going to look at the student grid. And all you're determining with the student grid is whether it was correctly used. Did they use the grid correctly? On the pop-out sheet, it will tell you how to determine the score. If it contains no errors, it's a 5. If it contains 1, it's a 4. 2 is a 3. 3 errors is a 2. And if the top solution wasn't used in step 6, or there were 4 or more errors in the grid, or if it was obviously manipulated, then you would get a 1 there. So we're going to give them a 5 for the grid and move on. Okay. So step 6, you are using the rubric that is accompanied to enter the scores here. So when you look, when you look at the rubric, you know, you have to enter the scores, but the form will calculate the results of the rubric. Make sure that you follow along with the suggestions on the rubric so that you know where to place your scores. Okay, so if I look at the relevance score, I determined it did a good job of addressing the UP, but no better than that. I'm going to give them a 4. For effectiveness, I said that it solved some aspects of the KVP, but there was a vague relationship to the purpose, so I'm going to give them a 3. The criteria, the action plan really very specifically addresses in a creative way the criteria. What's the impact? I'll give them a 4. Is it humane? That's always a good category. Is it humane? Do they really consider the consequences of their actions? And how well and how thoroughly is the plan explained? This one's out of 10, so they would get a 9 here. You would add comments so that turns white. Come over here. If they didn't submit a plan, you would click there, and you have your total score for that section. Then we have the overall score, overall impact, and as usual, there's a pop out with the rubric for that. What's the overall impact of the pieces? We have research applied, creative strength, and futuristic thinking that we have to consider. And so just click here. Did they apply research? Is it original productive thinking? This is where you go back and you kind of assess how many creativity points did you give them? Was it, just pretty basic, or did they really have those creativity points in strength in steps 1 and 3? So let's, be pretty average here. And then do we have evidence of innovative thinking, fresh insights? Is there a strong display of that? We're going to give them their score, give them the final comment over the overall impact of the book, your last words. Oops. And then they'll have their booklet. What I would tell you to do at this point then, you've got your booklet. It summarizes the steps here at the bottom. Go back to the summary, and then you can see them. This is against a second evaluator if the second evaluator were working, but you can see all of that, and then you can make your determination of your rank based on all of your booklets, and that you will add in. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you so much for agreeing to evaluate these. We hope that we've done what we can, especially this first year, to make the evaluation experience smooth. Thanks again.